Good afternoon. My name is Daniel Brown, and I am delighted to be your host for the OGV Energy Live this afternoon on the theme of digital transformation. OGV Live is an interactive show which aims to deliver news and insights from the energy sector by bringing to life the UK's leading energy industry publication, OGV Energy Magazine. Each month, we feature interviews and discussions with our partners from the publication and open up on the monthly topics. So don't be shy with your comments and questions in the chat, and I'll pick out some of the interesting questions to put to our guests. As this month's magazine is the digital transformation issue, we'll be welcoming guests and contributors on that topic, starting with our headliners section, which features Mario Enriquez, Global Business Development Manager for Sigal, Tobin Timmins, Data Analytics Director at EV Offshore, Andrew Roger, Business Development Manager at ProServe. This will be followed by our In the Spotlight section, which features Jason Brown, who's the CEO of Elements, Alfredo Haubold, Process Safety Consultant at Visus Group, and Graham Nelson, the Technology Director at IPGN. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Mario, Tobin, and Andrew for the headliner section. Welcome, Tobin, welcome, Mario, and welcome, Andrew. Good to have you with us today. If I can start with you, Mario, just to get us going, perhaps you could tell us just a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Sigal to get us started in our conversation today.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for the introduction, Daniel. So as you mentioned, I work as a global business manager in Sigal, and I have a background in software engineering and extensive experience in Microsoft technology. And I've been leading a team of developers on implementing critical integrations for our energy customers around the world. And Sigal, for those who don't know, it's a global digitalization partner for the energy industry. And we specialized in providing information technology, cloud solutions, software applications, and consulting services to all these energy customers around the world.
Okay, thank you, Mario. I think a lot of our conversation today will touch on questions of AI and the impact that AI technologies are having on the offshore energy industry. I think you spent a lot of time working in the co-pilot space within Sigal. First of all, can you tell us just a little bit about, just a briefer as to what co-pilots are, and then how you see them growing and being useful inside the offshore energy industry?
Absolutely. So I like to say that co-pilots, or all these co-pilots world, it's bringing superpowers to pretty much everyone. Depending on the scenario, depending on the use case, you can think about it as your capabilities enhanced to a different level. And that goes for office workers, but I think it's especially relevant to look at in the energy sector to all these first line workers that work in offshore, and they have by using their mobile phones, they have enhanced powers to do much more and much more efficient. So I like to say it on that side. I think it's been an interesting phase that we are watching right now. I think there's a lot of things happening at the same time. So I think besides looking at the typical use cases that we all understand, and of course predictive maintenance, all this kind of stuff, it's not new, it's been there for many years. I think now we can look at co-pilots as I said, as a new superpower that everyone has on the tip of their fingers and allow them to do much more.
Yeah, I think it's an intriguing area in terms of how you bring that extra capability to people working kind of in the carpeted area of our industry. But I think there's a real question in there as to how then also you bring that capability into the non-carpet area of our industry as well. And perhaps I can move to you, Tobin, to talk a little bit more about that. I think you introduced EV to us earlier as a company that puts video systems into anything hostile and remote. So perhaps you could tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about EV, and maybe they can move on to think about the impact of digital technologies in the sector that you're working in.
Yes, thanks, Daniel. And that's right. EV are known as a vision-led diagnostics provider for the upstream industry. We work in oil and gas, geothermal, and more latterly carbon capture. And we're typically there to try and fill an information need. Something has happened, an event has occurred affecting productivity, or over time checking the status and lifespan of an asset. you need a different sort of information potentially to understand how that's performing, and we're here to try and bridge that gap. My role within the company is to really listen to the operators of these assets and understand where those gaps exist. What are the challenges they face? What's the information that they need to effectively make a decision, the right decision at the right time on what to do next and how to proceed, and also to understand if any action that they're taking is being successful. So with that in my capacity, I help steer those conversations into our technology teams to help ensure that we're developing solutions that are meaningful and needed, and then also to deploy them through a team of experts to actually turn the handle on them and deliver these applications as services to those that need them.
So in the context of that then, and kind of digitization, we imagine naively to be kind of just taking a paper-based process and replacing it with a more kind of digital-based process. And you can imagine going from a tablet to a piece of paper to a tablet quite easily. My sense is that digitization in the remote diagnostics, remote visualization area you work in, that's quite different in terms of the digital blockers, the digital challenges that you're working with. I mean, what do the digital challenges look like in your space, and how are you attacking them?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, digitalization means different things to different people, and you know, I'm blessed. I've worked in an industry that is very data driven, and particularly for asset related decisions, management decisions, a lot of data is gathered and used to help influence decisions at a particular time. With interventions, though, while there's been a huge amount of progress in, let's say, real-time alerting and dashboards, whether it's for productivity or integrity, when something does change, when the status of a system becomes degraded or there's an alert, you now need another layer of data below that to help understand what that means in context. And that's usually used by somebody that's in charge of overcoming that issue, whether it's a well integrity engineer, a production technologist. They need to understand not just the symptoms that are being reported in real time, but now get down to the root cause, the severity, and really understand what those options are, which systems, which solutions are the most viable with the lowest risk profile and highest chance of success. And the intervention space has been doing that for a long time. And I guess the difference now in making this part of the digital transformation is that classically that data was gathered at a single time for a particular application in mind. It was used, a decision was made, and then potentially that data discarded. But now I think the technology's caught up to an extent where we can look at what's happened in the past, and we can look at what's happening in nearby and neighboring assets and use that information with a lot more context to understand what's happening with the here and now of our particular issue, and keep that data alive and repurpose it going forward for future applications. So I think, if anything, it's the swell in our ability to handle masses of data and draw meaning from it in a way that's quick, easy, and effective. And really, that's where EV's been spending a lot of time and energy, is making the most of existing information in context with the current challenges.
Mm. I think there's almost a competition in discussions within the AI space as to how long it takes you to move from AI is cool to you really, really need good data in order to make your AI technologies work effectively. So I think as well, they'll probably come back to the AI and data foundations theme as we head forwards. Perhaps, Andrew, though, we can move on to yourself and ProServe as an organization which is, I think, slightly higher in terms of being on the seabed rather than under the seabed in terms of the work that Token's doing. Is that a fair characterization of the work that ProServe is involved in and your role in ProServe?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, ProServe's a controls technology company. We look at improving the reliability, integrity, and efficiency of the critical infrastructure, you know, through our control systems that we provide. We've had over 60 years of experience. We have 13 global locations and operate in over 60 countries. But our core business is subsea control systems. We have over 120 around the globe with 300 subsea control modules deployed subsea, actively working now.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm just going to say, so in terms of the question of digitization, the work that ProServe has been doing has been fundamentally remote for all the time that subsea technology has been around. So there must have always been an aspect of digital working to the business. So how has the needs of customers in the digital space changed over the last few years? So what's the impact of recent digital technologies in terms of what Prozip does?
Yeah, no, definitely. So recently, I mean, I was just reading the Kimberlite report from 2023 recently, and one of the future outlooks, the key points there, 35%, which is the highest percentage, was the expectation to be utilizing data intelligence, AI, and machine learning in the future to understand the data that we're getting from subsea, and that's what we are trying to do now with we support and we provide subsea control systems. And we are now looking to develop, and we are in development collaboratively with a couple of clients on doing that. The focus is on extending the life and the performance of the control systems for our customers. I mean, a lot of these assets, as you said, are subsea. You want to make sure it can stay there as long as possible and continue and provide production for the operators. That's their aim goal. So with the development that we have in progress, we are giving more and enhancing the visibility and giving actionable insights. So that's where our software solution sits. And it does that to minimize downtime, prevent unplanned interventions, things like that. So it supports the cost perspective and all other aspects of what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, no, thank you. There's a couple of questions coming in I can see on the chat, but before I go to those, if I could just try and bring the circle back to Mario and Tobin and Andrew, please do dive into this one. Because there's been a lot of news over the last couple of years in terms of generative AI technologies, so text-based large language models leading to the launch of the Copilot, Mario, that you touched on. The other side of this, though, is a lot of the data that is out there and that working in our industry is structured. It's numbers, it's technical, scientific, it's measurement data rather than text-based data. So is there an alignment between the Gen AI Copilot space and the kind of the fact-based data that's out there? Is there a way of deriving benefit from both of those?
That's a super interesting question, Daniel. And so the way the technology is evolving is that we always had the issue with unstructured data before, right? And of course, easy for us if we talk about structured data. The good thing on all this new technology is that even with unstructured data, it's possible to identify insights that can be translated into concrete actions, right? And let me take one step back because I think it's super relevant to mention this, is that we, more than ever, we are generating digital data. We have been doing it for many years now, and now with these co-pilots, we will exponentially increase that amount of digital data. So it will become harder and harder for end users to find the relevant data and extract any juice out of it without using a superpower, as I mentioned initially, right? And that superpower needs to be a copilot. So we need to look at copilots, these copilots, first of all, as a super powerful enterprise search that will allow us to find the right information in all these terabytes of data that is generated not only by humans now, but also by copilots and also all the sensors we have in all the platforms we are running. So I think that's a super interesting era that we are facing now. And hopefully we'll see a lot of evolution on the energy industry. So I know that we will touch upon on some of these questions. I see that there's already a couple of questions about if we are introducing this technology fast enough. We can touch upon that a little bit later, but of course, data means also there needs to be an increased concern on the security, data security. More than ever, I think it's super important that before we talk into AI, we talk about security. And we know security doesn't move as fast as we would like to. And it's not valuable if we are talking about generative AI and copilot solutions if we don't have a proper security strategy in place.
Yeah, so sometimes our cybersecurity colleagues get a little bit of flack in terms of some of the barriers and hurdles they make organizations leap over, but they are super important in terms of being able to trust and take action then on the results that are out there. Torben, perhaps I can come to you in terms of, again, the intersection between kind of the AI buzz that's out there and the applicability of that in the area that you work. When customers ask you those questions, how do you respond in terms of the of grasping the value of AI?
Well, I think the value is absolutely there, and I think we're on the cusp of a tremendous position in time now where AI adoption will become much more normal and will provide a lot of value. And if you think about the context we're sitting in, large amounts of data, time-driven, critical decisions, the power of AI is to help understand the trends and patterns that we would normally spend a lot of time looking for and understand manually. And if we can transpose those into a system that's able to identify them at much, much faster speed, real time especially, then the advice that we can get from the co-pilots, from the AI that we deploy, whether we take it as fact or whether we use them as discussion points that you'd have to then verify and check yourself, that we'll see in the fullness of time. But being given those prompts, being given that dissemination of data in a much shorter time frame can, as Mario said, give you the superpowers you need to accelerate your workflows without really trimming back on the quality of what you were doing. You're just doing it in a much more effective and efficient way. So yes, I think there's a lot of potential here. We use a number of different AI applications to analyze our data sets, and with tremendous success. And that's transformed workflows that would take multiple weeks into some instances only a matter of days. And we know that there's even further we can push that to make it faster too. So I think, again, it's a very interesting time in that respect. Are we doing it fast enough? Well, you could always argue you could never do it quickly enough, but I think the main thing is we're actually having these conversations now, and it's not a taboo topic. It's now something that we're actually actively embracing rather than thinking, as you put it down, is a cool idea, you know.
Yeah, it's kind of riding the Gartner curve down into the. You start with at the peak of inflated expectation, you're down into the trough of disillusionment, which I think is almost tracking Nvidia's share price in terms of where they've been and where they're going next. But now starting to see that kind of coming out into the plateau where we're seeing real solutions delivering real value. So that's a really exciting place. One of the areas that AI tends to intersect with also is the question of how do you get the computing power and resource out there in order to be able to deliver it. And the usual go-to solution for that is something that is cloud-based. The energy sector, though, is tricky in so much as it tends to operate in out-of-the-way places. It operates in many countries around the world that don't have in-country cloud resources available. So I think if looking in the west of Africa, there's very little around there in terms of the usual cloud hosting providers, for example. So Andrew, in terms of the architecture of this, in terms of being wanting to be able to use the cloud, but having to deal with that potential access to that, how do you move forward to square that particular circle?
Yeah, no, definitely. So one, yeah, you're right. So we have to look at various different levels of digital transformation. Some of our clients are ready to go real-time data, in the cloud. They can support that. We can support them. We have all the systems set up to be cyber secure, look at the data, manage that correctly, and look after their data for them and give them real-time insights with the solution that we're developing in the subsea space. But sometimes that's not feasible and practical. So we also look at edge on-site solutions that have the same capabilities, but we just have to manage getting the data, reviewing that data in different ways. It can be done on-site, but also we can take that away by using different methods. So I think with digital transformation, there has to be flexibility. We can't all go straight to utilizing AI. There are stages that we have to do, and we have to work with the clients in the right way to take them through those steps, to get improvements, to utilize the data, get the data intelligence to them, give them value from that data intelligence, and then continue to move through the pyramid, I would say.
No, thank you. So I see,
Yeah,
James Brown has a question in the chat there around, is the energy sector adopting an edge technology and containerization strategy fast enough? So it sounds like in terms of direction, that's something that I can see Mario's nodding, Tobin as well. But I think it sounds like that's the direction. In terms of the pace, though, I mean, this is a very conservative industry. So are we able to get at this fast enough in order to get the change out there that's needed?
Yeah, so I just briefly touch upon it so more than ever we are not doing this as fast as we would like to because of security. That's the main reason, and also the second reason is because we know that the industry sector still relies a lot on on-prem data sources, which of course requires a little bit more work and more time to actually ingest that data into the right models. Also, I want to just mention, because Tobin mentioned it, I think we need to also differ between AI, which we have been all using on the last 10, 15 years. It's not new, but it became again a buzzword due to all this recent evolution in the large language models worlds, and that's how copilots pop up. So I think when we're talking about AI, I think, of course, absolutely, I think AI is super good and super fast on identifying patterns in data, something that on human eye, it will take probably months. A good AI model can probably take seconds to detect those patterns. And the large language model then will just bring that in a more natural human language to the end user that will allow them to build upon it, on top of it. But yeah, I don't think we are doing this fast enough. And I agree, Daniel, when you say that energy is typically an industry that takes a little bit more time than usual. But there's other areas where we see that, healthcare, for example, right? And it's always the same reason. It's the security of the data that it's super important. That's the main reason why we are not taking this as fast as we'd like to.
So there's that element of security. There's also that element of making sure we get it right. So in AI, the generative aspect has always been hindered a little bit by the questions of hallucination, the reliability of the results that are out there as well. So there's a variety of different checks and balances, I imagine, that need to be in place before you can create something which is you can trust to put out there in front of customers. Tobin, do you want to come in on this topic as well?
Yeah, I think the topic of trust is one that we'll see in the fullness of time. I think certainly from our own experiences, the results that we're able to obtain when we have an expectation on a result, it's very easy to verify what we're looking at and whether we believe that's an approach we can adopt forevermore. I guess the challenge comes when you're trying to accelerate new challenges and new problems where perhaps you haven't got that data to learn from, and that's a space we'll see a lot of development over the course of time, I'm sure. But that's something we'll have to live with. In terms of things like security, well, it is particularly for a business that is very much about competitive advantage for those involved in a very high stake, high cost business with big returns. You can understand that there is a strong need to keep secure information private, and fully respect that. And whatever systems we deploy in our space, we're very careful as an industry to make sure that data is protected and to try and minimize that risk. So yes, it may feel like a hindrance at sometimes, but perhaps it's one of those safety checks for our own health and longevity in that respect too.
Mm.
Yeah, no, indeed. And again, a lot of this touches on the question of the data that are the foundation of any actionable and trustable result that comes out of it. Perhaps I can open this to all of you to think about it. If you are talking to a customer whose data perhaps isn't quite where they would like it to be, in terms of being able to get some value out of either some of the more straightforward digital technologies that are out there, or heading into the predictive AI space, where do you start with them? How do you start to get them on a journey that will lead them to that value in a way that is kind of affordable and will be delivering to them over time? Any thoughts on the data question?
Well, I can start there. I think so. Most important is that I think what AI is bringing to this Copilot era is that we can, as Tobin said previously, and I mentioned as well, I think identifying patterns or value out of the data. But also on this new Copilot's world, I think it's super important, a good integration strategy, data integration strategy. And why is that? Because I think it's super relevant to mention that, because if we can combine multiple different data sources, AI is not only to identify patterns on each different data source, but also combine and inflate the results that we are returning back to the models and to the end user. So I think it's important to say that when we talk about this experience and to bring the value out of it, we know that it's been, I mean, this technology is not accessible to every company. There's a premium cost on top of it. So most of the customers, they come back and say, how do I justify the return on investment on this? How do I get it, right? And typically the discussion ends up always on the same kind of goals, which is, let's look at the data sources, let's integrate those data sources, and let's AI just understand if there's a potential combination of data that might be bringing some value, right? And then define the use cases on top of it. What kind of use cases can we solve by looking at this inflated data from multiple different data sources? So there's a lot of ways to discuss this and a lot of ways to attack it. Yeah.
Yeah, what we try to do is connect. We have expertise in the oil and gas industry, and so do our operators who we work with, our customers. They have a lot of subject matter expertise to add into whatever tools, digital tools that we're utilizing to look at the data and to make sense of that data. So we constantly collaborate and make sure that we add those insights into the software solutions that we create, so we get the best of both worlds, right? And that also helps us and the clients kind of progress and understand and adopt this technology a lot quicker. And just if you don't mind going back to one of the previous things, I think also with the cybersecurity, you know, I'm hoping, and I think we're moving towards more regulations in that space, and that will help everybody be on the same playing field and also be confident to share data between parties. When those regulations are at place, everybody can kind of work towards the same. The standards are set. We can all work towards it. There's still a little bit more ambiguity than there should be in our industry around that, I find.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think the DORA regulations are currently rolling out over the financial services industry at the moment, and that's got a very strong aspect around cybersecurity and such like. And we see the same happening for CNI with NIS2 and the changes that are there. So potentially there may be a leveling factor in terms of how all of this works. We're coming towards the end of our time together in this section. So, but before we move on, and just echoing a question that Colin Rawlinson has put in the chat, is suggesting that perhaps digital transition is a little bit last century, and we should be thinking now about the AI transition. If you're talking to CEOs about where we're going next, or what they should be thinking about in their digital spend in the coming years, what are you bringing to CEOs' minds? What are you asking them to be thinking about in terms of strategy, investment, and the distinct capabilities that digital will bring their organisation? Perhaps Tobin, we can come to yourself first, and then Andrew, and then Mario.
Yeah, I think it's right. It is an iteration, effectively, of what digital means over time, and I think a lot of companies have spent good money investing in systems that allow them to standardize, store, and access information in ways that make sense. The current, let's say, race is now, how do you make the most of that data in the shortest time possible? And I think some of perhaps the challenge of getting people on board is a combination of either the fear of change or the resistance of change. I have something, I've been doing it for a long time. Why would I differ from that? And showing and demonstrating, as we have, the value cases of being able to use information that exists at a higher level, then I think really it's that message of keep going on the journey. It's not going to be something that has a particular destination. It's a path that will evolve over time. And I think the sooner you get on that journey, and start planning the steps ahead, the easier it's going to be to keep the pace, and probably the lower cost of implementation it's going to be, because you're doing it iteratively rather than trying to come in and solve a solution with one big stick that potentially is a lot to handle at a given time. So make a start. It's the best way of doing anything new.
That's the little and often prescription, I think. If I can summarize, get going and start to get some value out on the table. Thank you, Andrew. What do you make of the challenge and how you take a CEO forward?
No, and it is a change management challenge, and it's making sure that what I like to see is digital adopters within the businesses in say their functions as well. So digital adopter in finance, sourcing, etc., supported by a digital team that kind of understands the new software, new solutions, or ERPs that are being put into the business. Having those constant touch points gives more of a, I always see that gives more of a positive adoption of the technology. I mean, I think we've all probably heard, oh, I've just had this new ERP system, and it's been harder to use than what I've been using for the past 10 years, for example. It's really to get the people involved, have people touch points within the different groups within the organization, and just do as you said, bits and steps and bits and pieces as we go along.
You've got to bring the people with you, otherwise the change ain't going to happen. So absolutely. Mario, would I want to finish us off?
I just want to add that, and I've tried to put it a bit on the article in the magazine. So for those who haven't read yet, I think it's a good reading. I think we have seen throughout technology history a few shifts in the technology. Right, we started with personal computers, then the internet came up. And now, of course, this co-pilot here. I think the companies that adopt faster in a better way or adjust better to these transitions are the ones that will succeed. And these co-pilots will be for sure a huge transition, massive transition. Probably, I would say that my expectation is that it will create even more impact than the proper internet itself. Created in the 70s or in the 90s, sorry. Absolutely, and it's a huge competition. Everyone is fighting for the same resources. It's a super fast-paced world these days. Data-driven companies are taking decisions way faster than 10 years ago. And I think this technology is something that it's super critical to adopt as fast as possible if you don't want to lose the train. And as I said, the companies that will be faster and smarter on adopting this or doing this transition will be the ones that will drive the industry in 5 years' time. And this will happen fast, very fast.
Yeah, no, indeed. So if you are an industry in a market that is challenging, where market conditions are changing very quickly, building an agility, building the ability to cope with and take advantage of change seems important. And I think our argument from this section is that digital technologies are a fundamental enabler to enable you to do that. So Mario, Andrew, Tobin, thank you very much for being with us for this first section of this OGV Live event. And yet I need to say goodbye to yourselves. I need to welcome 3 more guests as we move into our spotlight section. As a reminder, our guests are Jason Brown, who is the CEO of Elements, Alfredo Haubolt, our process safety consultant at Visus Group, and Graham Nelson, who's the technology director at IPGN. So can I welcome Jason, Alfredo, and Graham to the stage? Welcome, gents. Good to have you with us this afternoon. So perhaps I can start. Alfredo, with yourself. Would you be willing to just give us a little bit of an introduction to yourself and Visus Group?
Sure. Well, I'm Alfredo Haubolt. I'm a chemical engineer. Have been 2 years and now on Visus. And basically, my job there is to develop a new AI product we call Hazard Persistent. And I'm leading the movement as the product manager of that. We are, as Visus, a consultancy, a risk consultancy focused on enhancing the process safety overall, in asset or in PHA.
Thank you, Alfredo. So in the first section of our talk this afternoon, Mario gave us an introduction to co-pilots and what they are. I think in the context of the HAZOP assistant, there's a concept of explainable AI in there. You're able to share a little bit about what explainable AI is and why that matters?
Sure. Explainable AI is a kind of AI that goes back to when AI was not called AI, basically. So basically, it's a set of algorithms which someone who does not know anything about programming can set in. Can produce logical path out of those algorithms, and from that create a whole net that will behave on a certain way. So basically, it will think as it was an AI, but it will think always the same way. So differentiating itself from the generative AI, and this as it's made of logical connections, it's always totally predictable, and you can always see what is going to happen.
Okay, so then in the context of a HAZOP analysis, it sounds like being able to understand what the machine is thinking, so to speak, is going to be fundamental to having trust in the results of an AI facilitated HAZOP. Is that the argument for why explainable AI is important in this context?
That's exactly the argument why we chose explainable AI for this tool. As experts in HASOPs, we've come from Lloyd's Register. We're now Visus Group. There's people that have been doing HASOPs for 30 years, 35 years, and they more than anyone, than no one knows that um, process safety people normally is very afraid of things because that's their job. Basically, they have to look at the risk everywhere. So we have to provide them with something they can always rely on, and they can be totally confident that the results will be true. That's why we chosen the DXAI for that purpose.
Yeah, no, thank you. I saw Jason smiling as we were talking about risk and certainty in the HAZOP space. Jason, you're CEO of Elements, working in subsea integrity, I think. And to give us an introduction to yourself and to Elements.
Yeah, thanks for that, Dan. Thanks to the previous guys as well, and everybody who's joined online. So yeah, Jason Brown, CEO of Elements. Newly formed, looking like the new kids on the block, but we've been around for a while. Prior to that, Dan, I was working with ACE and the digital twin technology in visualization collaboration. And Graham, we've got a few grey hairs. We spent a lot of time in the engineering field, ops, maintenance, integrity, that sort of thing. Probably too much time. So delighted, Dan, to be here today.
Okay, thank you. So Elements is building out software in the subsea integrity space. What brought you to the view that new software was required in that space? What's the thinking there?
Yeah, well, believe it or not, we've had some iteration of the software for about 35 years. Yeah. And Elements was really born out of this requirement from the customers, and really pushing to think about products differently. It was interesting to hear, Mary, Tobin, and Andrew before talking about the problems as well. So if you think, if you're going out to buy software, really, what you should be thinking about, something that where the data is useful, the data is open, it's reusable, in this kind of ecosystem mindset that when you're buying a product, that it seamlessly goes into the workflows, and that data is useful to then do the clever stuff, the AI stuff as well. So that's really why Elements was born, to take the right place for a bit of software that was legacy, and try and be part of this wider digital ecosystem beneath the waves.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think that the question of data as ecosystem rather than data as an aspect tied deeply into a product is a really interesting one as we head forwards with organizations with data in perhaps all the different clouds, on-prem, in all sorts of different places scattered around the world.
Yeah.
I think, Graham, you're as part of IPGN, you're developing a CRM system, I think, which will contain data that touches on pretty much every aspect of an organization. So is that something? Tell us a bit about yourself at IPGN, and then perhaps a little bit in terms of the question of CRMs as a home of an organization's data.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Dan. Thanks for having us, and thanks everyone for joining. Co-founder and technical director at IPGN Solutions. So we're pretty new. We're a year old. So we moved out of more operational type roles to found this new company pretty much to solve the kind of everyday problems that people have. So our speakers today have largely been speaking about the problems nearer the coalface, if you like, with the actual production, interventions, drilling, whatever. So we're more about the processes that people use to do a lot of the support jobs that are required. Okay, so yeah, a key product is our end-to-end CRM, as we call it. So a key part of this particular product is the configurable options that are available in the tool. So everyone's business is different. We don't all, if we were all doing the same thing, then yeah, that would be chaos. So things like a CRM, etc., then have to be tailored to match your business. And that's quite good. You can get that done quite often when you're deploying a new CRM. Your business also changes from month to month, quarter to quarter, new challenges come up, etc. And the flexibility to be able to change your system to, change the fields you might have in your database or change the relationships between data is quite important. And with conventional systems, that can be quite challenging. So a key aim of ours was to make a system basically that suits your business and allows you to change your system to suit our business. So we're really keen to solve the everyday problems that people have, rather than the detail of the flow, the production issues, etc.
No, indeed. So I just realizing in terms of the conversation we have today, our previous three guests have been working with products in areas have been quite mature for quite some time. Whereas Graham, Jason, Alfredo, you're all launching new products more or less into the market. Perhaps Graham, I can stick with you and then move around to Jason, Alfredo, in terms of the challenges, the difficulties, the blockers that you're seeing in terms of bringing something new into the world, so to speak. It's certainly a challenging industry, challenging times. So clearly there's some macro stuff going on. But what thoughts and experience do you have in terms of the blockers that are out there and some of the tactics for getting past them in terms of launching new digital technologies?
Yes, that's quite interesting because when we set out, we had what we thought was a very valuable proposition ourselves. So we just want to solve people's problems and get on with it. So we think horizontally across the business from start to end, and we think there's a great deal of value in some transparency so that everyone that does their job has some context, if you like. And what we see in our experience is actually a lot of obstacles to that we however much we don't like silos, they exist, and quite often the tools infrastructure that we build in exaggerates that. So you might have a separate CRM system from your ERP, from your engineering systems, etc., your purchasing systems, and it can make these separations more exaggerated. So we were keen for a more integrated. But how do we break into that? And that's an interesting question. So we figured, well, we're not going to challenge SAP, we're not going to challenge Salesforce and try to copy what they do. Rather, we try to focus on the problems that we thought we were there, and particularly go after a piece of the market that might be interested in it. So we're focusing on the small and medium-sized businesses, the businesses that are maybe new into CRMs or that are putting their toes in the water, if you like, and that's really been our aim.
I know, it's interesting. As one of the statistics from the OGV magazine is that I think it was a study done in Texas. They were looking at the number of organizations that had been adopting or had plans to adopt AI technologies. And I think it was 50% of companies had no plans at present to either look at and never mind adopt AI technologies. But particularly heading towards the percentage got larger and larger as the company size got smaller and smaller. So being able to target towards those smaller organizations to provide them, well, clearly must be a different style of support to those larger organizations which perhaps have more capacity to think about the stuff. That's real interesting. Another area that came out of the magazine, Jason, something you touched on in your article in there was the question of standardization, which again perhaps helps in terms of barrier to entry to be able to get started with a new customer. Can you share your thoughts in terms of standardization as an issue, as a need, as a context in our industry?
Yeah, so one of the key areas that we see, the adopters, and it was interesting to hear before, so I'm trying not to repeat as well, where you have, a lot of the engineers are being tasked with and support with these central groups of actually bringing new tools in as well. But one of these key challenges is standardization. How do you actually measure the value that you're taking out of a digital tool if you have 16 operations all over the globe doing different things? So, about workflows, et cetera, et cetera. So back to something Graham's picking up on in there, and it's product thinking. So where does your product fit in this ecosystem within the workflows? Make it easy to transform, adopt, and adapt. Yep, so that you can optimize these workflows as well. And then you can help the business get the return on investment, very easily by having a standard process there as well. So if you're launching in the market, be very clear on your value, very clear where you sit within those workflows, but very open to being standard, because what we are actually delivering is basically just a tool. How that tool is adopted and adapted, is something we need to understand as well. So very, very conscious of the product thinking, Dan, if that makes sense. Yeah.
No, indeed. And Alfredo, just thinking in terms of the evolution of Visus Group from Lloyd's Register, as you mentioned. So moving from an organisation which is globally well known to one which is perhaps not as well known yet in terms of its evolution. Do the comments from Graham and Jason fit in terms of how you're seeing the go-to-market of the HAZOP tool and the challenges you see, particularly around the world, in terms of moving this forwards?
Totally. I think that it's a normal behavior of everyone to be rejecting the change. Because at the end of the day, we're used to what we have right now, and it's difficult to try and to introduce new tools inside our workflows. I think that at least from our side, we're trying to focus on generating the more value we can, so that people can actually see it, test it, try it, and once they've tried, is when they will be able to say, okay, this is actually useful, this is what we actually need. And especially I think that for normally the people that comes from fresh from the university, they are born just as me. We have been born with a computer on our hands, so it's kind of different from us, and we kind of have to focus the efforts on getting that people to move the right gears inside their organizations, because the movement also comes with the social, with the people that is involved in it. I think that will be my
Yeah.
take on that.
Perhaps we can dig into that area a little bit more closely in terms of the perceptions versus reality and expectations of digital progress in the offshore energy industry. I mean, we've been talking about digitalization in this industry since the early 90s, mid 90s, in terms of when things really got going. But this is 20, 30 years later, and we're still talking about digitalization in the offshore energy industry. The level of frustration, I can imagine, for those who, as you say, were born with a digital device in their hands versus those who came to digital a bit later on in their career. That must be quite significant in terms of the desire to make digital change. How does that play out in terms of the dynamics, in terms of way forward, and in terms of how you try and encourage greater take up of digital technologies? I guess within your own organisation, but I guess within your customers as well.
Yeah. um I think that's the point, that the digitalization is being this slow at entering the oil and gas, is noted. I mean, most of the industries are right now um, developing huge ways, not huge, but very innovative ways to do whatever they do, and they're kind of getting all the good results out from that. They're getting huge numbers, they're getting improvements, large improvements. um, but the oil and gas industry is quite complex, so I think that's why it is slower. So we have to embrace that complexity, try to get the more mm, safe decision in that, and try to introduce it slowly but steady on the industry.
Yeah, that element of piece by piece. So if I can
Exactly.
build on that, if I can build on that, Graham, perhaps with yourself, I think as part of the solutions you're developing, you're doing a lot of work in chatbots and in interactions with digital systems, which perhaps don't necessarily involve a mouse and clicking and perhaps a bit less of the keyboard. So a more familiar, more human style of interaction. Um, I'm intrigued as to how that's going, and then also if that helps in terms of the question of adoption and how to make digital systems feel more comfortable for those who this digital may not be their first choice of how to interact with the system.
Yeah, that's interesting. So where we are just now on our, I guess, on our AI journey, we're fairly early into this. But we have a number of ideas that we intend to launch. Actually, we've got a launch party coming up on the 8th of November on the subject. But how we're looking at it is to basically do this, start small and demonstrate what we can do with the small piece. So by the color of my hair, you can imagine I grew up using forms, right? I've been using forms for years and years. Now, so we're now learning that actually chat interaction is a heck of a lot more efficient way of being able to exchange information. Rather than having to find the right form and put in the right field, etc. If you're not doing it every day, that can be very cumbersome. So we're finding we're seeing just now that start simple, like have a chatbot on your website for all your FAQs and for all the information. Anything that you particularly want to share, you can fairly simply or fairly readily set something up based on your documentation for that. And then that's pretty low risk, pretty easy to see some quick results. And then you can start doing it with your own data internally. You can start to think about how you might filter that to control certain data so that different users can only see the results from certain agents that have got the right information. So I think the piece by piece approach, Tobin said, make a start. I think that's our motto as well with that is go and try it. There's so much out there. I mean, our social media feeds, I watch X and things like that, and of course LinkedIn, and you just see there's so much coming along every day. It's quite hard to filter between, what's the clickbait, what's the hype versus what is the what has got strong foundations. As an engineer, I've got a healthy cynicism for quite a lot of what I see, but you don't want to miss out on it. You want to understand what's actually there and what's useful. So small steps, I think, is the way to develop and bring people along with us.
No, indeed, Graham. And I think, Jason, that kind of aligns with the thoughts you had earlier around product thinking and trying to get things out there that are useful. So I mean, the challenges, though, of adoption and embedding of products that are out there. And then there's also the question, which again, kind of Graham touches on, in terms of the interaction and connection of many systems together in order to deliver a result which a single system itself wouldn't be able to do by itself. How does that work in terms of the development work on the side elements?
Yeah, I think it's a good point, and thanks for Graham for making my job a little bit easier on here and coming last on this as well. From the development side, if we talk about elements, our job is to focus on one thing and do one thing really well, or try and excel on that one thing, and not complicate things as well. If you think of what we're trying to break into, so the operators or the energy companies have made huge investments in their enterprise systems. They've already made investments in their people. So how do you leverage the enterprise systems? How do you leverage the people? How do you make it easy to put into these workflows as well? And back to this collaboration, we've heard that as well. We talked about buzzwords in the industry, but from a product perspective, it's never been more important. Yeah, so that the users can, back to these workflows, adopt, adapt, transform, and optimize really simply. And something that you were hinting on there, Graham, as well, is actually how you support your product. Yeah. So how do you get something intuitive? So back to product design, it's very intuitive for users to find the value very quickly, and not back to, I think it was Andrew in the previous one who says they've introduced a new system and it's made my day worse. So this intuitiveness about thinking about your product as well, how it fits in as well, and that fits in to the whole product cycle. It's not just about making a secure product, but more about the user experience, the research that you're doing as well, and doing that in a wider spectrum. What we produce as individual products in the data, how is that being reused? How can it be incorporated and layered with more diverse data sets, etc. Yep. So there's a whole world out there, and I think that's our job as a product company to be providing that, to make that adoption a lot easier.
Yeah, I think it's interesting thinking about some of Alfredo's comments as well. Is that we live in a world where some of the most successful pieces of software out there have been developed entirely by the free market with no and it has been tested through basically popularity and end use. So nobody reads a manual for the Twitter user interface. They just get on with it. And they're similar for LinkedIn and so on. These are products which are well designed to work with little question. But there's no sense of a regulator looking at them and saying it's got to work this way or that way in order to work safely, work better.
Yeah.
And if you take that into the offshore energy industry, where clearly there's risks and clearly there's societal consequences if some of those risks mature, is this an area where we should be wishing for more regulatory involvement in terms of the tools and softwares to drive standards, drive expectations, or should we be continuing to allow a free market approach to allow software to develop and to move forwards? It's a pretty broad question. So if any of you want to come in that in terms of what would be best in order to move our market forwards, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I can maybe comment on one of the first people you should meet or be introduced to in a company is their security department, their ITIS. Yeah. I'm a fan of, obviously, the free market and let's go, but there has to be standards, whether that's the ISO standard, whether it's a SOC 2 standard as well. My biggest fear is always, as we've seen with oil and gas companies, that these get adapted to special needs. For example, company X needs special things, company Y needs another sort of things as well. So it's a great question, Dan. What I would say is yes and no on that, and let somebody pick up on that as well. But yeah, you need to be secure. You need to have a modern tech stack, and that's about being future ready. But also, you have to be able to develop your software in your kind of own way. Yeah.
There's got to be competition as well as hopefully something that will ensure a level playing field for those who need to come in. I'm realizing that there's a question just come through the chat and which you could fit into the time we have together from Gordon Ellis, which is asking around the use of data that's coming out of the HAZOP process. Have you looked at how the data gathered can be reused? For example, integrating into the development of a maintenance program with a RCM, FMECA process. Alfredo, your thoughts on that one?
First of all, thank you, Gordon. Then good thing about good thing about having IT tools is that most of the data we collect gets dumped into databases. That databases then allow us to play a lot with the data, to reuse it, and to improve the overall result we could get from that. The HAZOP system provides us with a functionality that is I think what most of the tools right now try to do, and it's the compatibility with other tools. So basically all of that database normally gets into a Microsoft environment where everything can connect. And besides from that, also our tool allow you to do FNICAs inside of it because of how it's built. But at the end of the day, not only that, but you can also get that information and extract it in any way you want to, thanks to the APIs that are developed.
So the data is there. It's up to the customer to continue to derive value from it as they wish.
Exactly.
While we were discussing this one, Alfredo, another question has come in from Kelvin, which I thought I'd throw in there. And if any of you want to pick up on this one, it's speaking to the question of open versus closed systems. There's a whole bunch of questions around trust, reliability, development. I guess potentially cost also, because training and a large language model is a hugely costly exercise to do. So what are your thoughts? What are you hearing from customers in terms of a preference for the enterprise large language models, OpenAI, others are available, versus things like Meta's Llama in terms of moving forwards with AI? What's the preference out there at the moment?
I can maybe start again. It varies. I think there's an ambition for open. Everything we are seeing is closed, and a move towards platforms that are offering one contextualization of the data from systems of record, and then offering almost bespoke, depending on the domain or the question being asked. Yeah, whether it's not really generative, it's more supportive AI, if I can use that term as well. And given the security issues around that as well, I don't know. There may be for core data or decision or scenario exploration, I think it'll be closed, and OpenAI for something else as well. Is there a place for a hybrid? I don't know. It's a great question. I've no idea what the answer is, but my gut feeling is it'll be hybrid. Yeah.
So I guess there must be constraints around deployment as well, because if you're looking to use something like OpenAI, then it requires a certain level of internet capability within the environment you're trying to deploy it. So if you're blessed to live in one of those countries which has data centers everywhere, then perhaps that's straightforward.
Yeah.
If you're not, then it can become somewhat more challenging in terms of how do you take advantage of these things.
Yeah, and how do you share across the organisation models that you're developing, etc. as well. So, Kelvin, there might be a business opportunity there for you if you can solve that.
Yeah. So lots and lots in there to think about. So, Graham, did you want to come in there as well?
Sorry, I'm just going to say, I guess related and connected to what Jason was saying is the self-hosting versus, using the, using the public models. I feel like so you have the option of being able to self-host some of these things to keep that isolation, especially with the sort of smaller models, and that might well suit, relatively straightforward applications where you can work with your own data, you can work with a model that's self-hosted and give you a little bit of confidence that, or give you that confidence that your information is secure in that respect.
Indeed, it's that question of where does your information go if it's used by a third party in training or whatever else it might be. You have to read the T's and C's very closely, I think, in part of that one. So as our time, I think, is also drawing to a close, perhaps I can just ask one of you the magic wand question. I'm just going to ask each of you that question once. In terms of what would you be wishing for in terms of something that would smooth the road for you in terms of moving digital transformation forwards in your own area? I think, Jason, you've touched on standardization before. There's something which is important to you. Is that the one you'd go for, or would you be thinking for other things in order to try and help move your business forwards?
Collaboration. I think Graham, we've said collaboration, or I've said that a few times as well, but these buzzwords go around the energy industry and with our engineering background as well. I'll go back to my earlier statement. I think it's the most important thing, collaboration, and then these things fall out. Collaboration between the energy companies, between the software providers, the tech providers as well, and this openness to reuse that data. You may be the best at doing X, but if it's locked down and an engineer spending time giving that to somebody else, that becomes a problem. So yeah, collaboration, and I think standardization, etc., falls out of that.
Yes, if there were more conscious consistency in terms of how our customers adopted all of these tools that are out there, they may make it a lot more straightforward, a lot faster for everyone to benefit from the investments that are out there. Graham, what are your thoughts on this one?
Possibly confidence. Again, the market and the industry just gaining confidence at what the technologies can do, and maybe that confidence coming through understanding what are the limitations and capabilities of different aspects of it. I think we hear AI as one thing at the moment. It's a buzzword that everything seems to be attached to, whereas mostly we're dealing with agentic systems of some sort that are a combination of things. And I think if there's a greater understanding of what each thing can do, or how you might constrain something, I think that would help. But I think confidence in the solutions is really important.
Yeah, there may be an element of storytelling there and being able to share successes, and that's not always something that companies your customers are willing to do. But to be able to stand on the shoulders of others in terms of successes would be fabulous as to what's out there. So on that note, Alfredo, I think you get the last word on this question. What if you had a magic wand and could wave it? What would your wish be?
I would then reaffirm on the collaboration, especially when we generate results. Right now, what we see is that every single tool has their own way to generate the results. So basically, you get a lot of different pieces of a puzzle that don't match. That's a big issue, because that makes every software company to have to focus on delivering everything, because all the other pieces doesn't match. So what if we try to specialize on what we do, then allow others to specialize on what they do, but build bridges in between those. That will be the point that I think will be the key, because no client wants to have 60 different environments for all they do, because there are a lot of stuff to do with software. I think that will be the key, the collaboration, especially on the how we build bridges in between software.
So a final question then, if I may, and coming back particularly to Jason Alfredo, your thoughts around the need for standardization, whether it's in semantics, in terms of the meaning of what's in a database, so you're able to take it and integrate it with something else, and the simplicity that comes if all of our customers are talking the same language in terms of needs, in terms of data sources, in terms of all of those things. Who is best placed to drive that? Is that a government thing? Is that an industry thing? Is that a standards organization thing? On whose door should we be knocking in order to try and make that happen?
There's a few out there, and my gut feeling is it's a combination of the standard agencies, but forcing everybody together in that environment. Does that make sense? That's a way of not answering your question, Dan, as well. There's a few companies of the accreditation bodies who've had a go at this. There's a few ISOs, and it's still not quite there. But again, I think it's if anybody's got the energy to do this, I think it's a standard agency, but with the right people involved in that. Yeah.
It sounds like something, maybe a little bit of regulatory push might be helpful, but then has to be pulled from industry in order to spend the time on it to make it work. Yeah. Alfredo, you're nodding. Is this the direction we should be going in, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think that until now, this kind of free regulation, like natural regulation, has been moving everyone towards Microsoft environments, because they are the most available. But I think that the need of an ISO or an standardization by a certain association is totally needed. I hope that maybe soon we can have this kind of uh, rules made by, maybe, I don't know, some maybe an association, the style of the IKEM or ISO, whoever can actually say, hey, this is the way it has to be done. You have to do it. You have to do it this way. There is no other way. So please get into the line.
If you do it this way, then you can just put the key in the lock and turn it, and off you go. So much more straightforward. I said it was a final question, but if I could just sneak one more in, and I'm going to come back to Graham on this one. There's some comments in the chat between Ineza and Ken with regards to that sense of kind of history repeating itself. Like, we've been here before, we've seen different technology waves come across at us, and we've done the internet, we've seen the dot-com bubble, we've seen the AI bubble, we've seen a variety of different things, all throwing technology change at us. And I get the sense that this is just kind of yet another one of the same things. Do you get that sense as well? Do you get any sense of learning from previous experiences through this as to how do we move forwards?
There's similarities, but I think there's also differences in. As I was touching on, the use of the generic term AI is actually covering so many different things, and I think as the hype on the term diminishes, then we'll see a variety of different things. I don't see it as one thing. Clearly, if the technology advances to step changes and AGI and things, that could change very quickly. But I think with what we've got today, there's a lot of different type of solutions and products out there, rather which, yes, it can revolutionize a lot of things, but I don't think it's the same as all of a sudden everybody's now got the new internet, personally, or everyone's now got airplanes.
So it's that element of the technology will keep changing, but we're still people underneath it, and so we'll continue to have people issues as we try and move the technology forwards. So I think on that very human, but still also very positive note in terms of how we move forwards, I need to say thank you to Graham, Jason, and Alfredo for this second half of our session, and thank you to all of our guests today for a very informative discussion, and thank you also to our audience for sending in all these fascinating questions, and hopefully be able to answer most, if not all of them, as we have gone through. through. One last thing to note, and I think it's popped up in the chat, is that Graham from IPGen will be hosting a launch event at the OGV Taproom in Aberdeen on November the 8th. That'll be promoted via the OGV website shortly, and I think we're all very welcome to come along if we can, if we're in Aberdeen for that one. Otherwise, please join us next month for the OGV Live, where we will be discussing the theme of international growth. Thank you all very much for your time with us today. Thank you. Good night.